Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming back. My name is Bobby Tulis. I'm from GFS, and for those of you who don't know who we are, we're the industry's largest provider of multi-carrier services and technology. So we take care of delivering parcels, in fact, over 50 million parcels each year to anywhere in the world. And I'm delighted to be welcoming Jessie Ragg in this next session. It's a fireside chat with Jessie. Jessie is from Chameleon, and our fireside chat discussion is all around item specifics, attributes, browse nodes, and product types, understanding marketplace requirements to easily diversify your business and how to use them to your advantage. Wow, Jessie. I'm sure we're going to get into what that's all about. Break that sound, break that down for us in this fireside chat. But first off, just a bit of background about Jessie. Jessie is the co-founder and managing director of Chameleon, and you've been consulting with resellers for a number of years now. I think since 2015, you've been working very closely consulting with e-com sellers on selling on marketplaces during this time. You also co-founded Chameleon, which is based out in Leipzig, right, Jessie?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And it says that your big picture approach to marketplaces has allowed you to help consumer-facing businesses of all sizes to diversify their sales, both in your home country of the UK and beyond. But now you guys are based in Leipzig. You've set up your company there. And tell me, as a start first, Jessie, I know that you're passionate about what you do as a business. What is it that that drives you? What is that passion that you have?
I think at the crux of it, the biggest thing that's driving Chameleon and where we're going is we're trying to create more of a level playing field for e-commerce. I've been, as you said, I've been in this space since 2015. And in that time, and my business partner's actually been in the space for a lot longer, since 2007. And in that time, what's been happening is more and more sellers and then online sellers are becoming very reliant on one or two channels, usually just their website. Usually Amazon comes into the mix as well. And what quite often happens is online businesses find themselves in a situation where maybe 80-90% of their revenue is coming from one channel. And quite often it's just Amazon, and then maybe it's all of the Amazon channels, or maybe it's just Amazon UK. But either way, it's a pretty precarious situation to be in. And there's a number of reasons how sellers end up in that position. But at Chameleon, what we're trying to do is basically remove a lot of the barriers to getting onto lots of marketplaces and lots of sales channels in general.
Yeah.
Both online and offline.
So how do you do that? What does your business do? How do you enable? First of all, I'm completely with you. I think marketplaces are a huge opportunity, but there's both risk if you have, like you said, 80% of your revenue is on one marketplace. Really what you need to be doing is diversifying. Mm-hmm. But of course, there's barriers there. So what does your business do? How do you help remove those barriers?
Well, it comes down, it's really dependent on the business that we're helping. That's the thing, is that depending on how you're selling products and what products you're selling, every business has different processes in place. Some businesses drive everything out of Microsoft Excel. Some people have custom built databases. Some people use, established industry leading softwares like Channel Advisor, Limworks. There's tons of great products out there. Yeah. And depending on the business, there's always a different process. And the idea of Chameleon is to kind of be a flexible solution which slots into any process to remove the final barrier, which is usually data related. It's usually issues of a title is too long to go on, an Amazon title is too long to go onto eBay. It can be something as simple as that. And without finding a good solution to doing that, it's then hard for a seller to kind of do that at scale. And so where we then try and come in is we have various solutions around taking information from one place, be it an online or an offline source, and putting it into another place, being a marketplace or a brick and mortar store. And the technology that sits behind that is completely flexible, completely adaptable to the business that we're working with. So we don't really have a one size fits all solution. Rather, it's completely customizable for every customer that we work with.
So if I understand correctly, in layman's terms, what Chameleon does is actually help with the vast amounts of data that you have to provide in specific ways to each marketplace to get your, to get your items listed, etc. So I guess this is where we're going to come on to explaining some of the things in the title, such as nodes and product types. I guess it all boils down to what is it that marketplaces want from online sellers, and what do you mean when you talk about item specifics and attributes, etc.? Because it sounds like gobbledygook to me.
I think that's the problem, is that there isn't really a generic terminology, but obviously, for somebody who's never sold on a marketplace, what I'm talking about are the sort of product details. So you can imagine an attribute. Amazon calls it an attribute, eBay calls it an item specific, but I'm talking about things like size, color, material, weight, real information about the product that you're buying. And from a consumer perspective, these values correspond to filters when they're searching. So if they're looking for a pair of trousers, they're going to be applying a search for trousers available in their size or in the color or the material that they want, if they want jeans or corduroys or khakis. And these are the values that, from a seller's perspective, if you don't provide the values and the buyers don't see what they're buying. And you can write a description and you can write bullet points about it, but at the attribute level, this is the information that the marketplace uses to help a buyer find their product, not just in the filter, but also with things like search algorithms.
Yeah. So are you saying then that although marketplaces ask for a lot of information, and the way they just, what they call an attribute in one place is called something else is somewhere else, at a different marketplace. But I think what you're saying is that it's really vital to be able to provide that data and do it as well as you can in order to, to attract, to make it easier for customers on that marketplace to find you and buy your products. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also about standing out from the competition, because if you're, for example, a new seller, and bear in mind when it comes to marketplaces like Amazon and eBay, you can have an established brand that's a household name and that has brick and mortar stores around the world, but they might have never sold on a marketplace themselves. They might be creating a listing for the first time. It might be the first time that product has ever been sold on a marketplace, and it's competing against some small mom and pop store that has been selling there for decades. And that's the great thing about marketplaces, is that it creates this level playing field, no matter if you're a mom and pop store or Nike or Adidas. Now the thing is, if you're creating that product listing for the first time ever and it's got no sales history, no rankings, the only thing you've really got going for you is to provide as much information about that product as you can, so that when a buyer starts to apply filters, and when the marketplace algorithm is deciding which products to suggest to the consumer based on their demographic, based on their search history, everything else, that the information about the product is there.
And that it's accurate, right?
And
because
that it's accurate,
that's what's going to drive the search engine, how people search and find your product. So it's absolutely vital that it's accurate. But obviously that takes a lot of time and effort. And I know from experience, we work with a lot of businesses where marketplaces is either the primary sales channel for them, or it's one of the many sales channels they talk. And I've actually heard some of our customers talking about having to hire more people just to be able to manage the overhead of selling on a marketplace, and to be able to give the focus that it needs in order to succeed. So, it's really time consuming, and there's a lot of detail, especially when it comes to product specifics and that's required for listings. What do you see as the main challenge for businesses, especially SMEs who, tight on resource, tight on budget? What do you see as the main challenges for them, and what's the argument for them to invest time in doing this?
You touched on a good one there. Human resources. Finding the people that understand how each of these marketplaces work is really hard. And especially if you're a small business now, where because of the pandemic, lots of global brands are now finally looking at marketplaces as a viable solution to reach customers where they are. What's happening is a lot of good marketplace talent is being snapped up from small companies and being moved into larger marketplace teams at big enterprise level companies. So it's quite hard already just to find the people to drive the marketplaces that you've got before you even begin looking at expansion. And obviously, the real problem is that the way that Amazon works is completely different to the way that eBay works. So if you're successful on Amazon and you've got a couple of people in your team who are really good at selling on Amazon, they're probably not the best people to help you start selling on eBay, and certainly not for Cdiscount or for Walmart or for any other
Because they
marketplace
work
you
in
might want to
different
sell on.
ways. Yeah.
So that's it. They're all completely different processes, and then of course, it becomes a real balancing act between, okay, well, if we're going to sell on this new marketplace in Germany, we need to hire a German person that can help us with the language aspects. But then on top of that, that person also needs to understand how our business works and how the German consumer thinks, and then also how Amazon and eBay and Real and Kaufland now and Otto and Zalando and all of these great German marketplaces, how do they all work and what are the differences between those? And how do we find that German person in our office in the UK?
Yes.
So from a human resources perspective, that's a big task. And of course, bringing that in and then making it all cost effective as well is really hard.
So if it's, if you're a small business who's just starting out, or you're, you just haven't got to that scale where you want to be at the moment, you may not have the choice to be able to go out and recruit people, either because you don't have the budget, the budget to do that, or you just can't even find the skill. So what's the alternative?
Well, I mean, that's one silver lining to the Brexit cloud is a lot of British businesses are going down the road of founding local entities in Europe. So that obviously, if you are in a position that you can afford the costs of founding a German GmbH or a Dutch business, which a lot of sellers are doing, depending on what works best with the rest of their supply chain, they can also then look at finding local talent there to help them with A, managing that, and B, then also managing their business within those countries. So that's something that some of our sellers are doing. For example, we're helping them to found a German business entity. And then we've got a full sort of logistics operation running over here so that we can help British sellers have local fulfillment that is then connected to their marketplace sales, which is kind of a nice equivalent to FBA. It's something that's outside of the Amazon ecosystem, but then lets them sell on Otto, for example, or Amazon and eBay and Kaufland and everything else. And then in the UK, hopefully they're using something like a GFS, or maybe they've got their own fulfillment solution. And then it's about getting the two married up and having it all talk to each other.
Yeah.
But
getting the two married up and having it talk to each other. But also, I think it's also vital when it comes to thinking about who you're going to choose as your partner, your supplier, whether that is your delivery partner or your software partner, because in many cases they have expertise that they can share with you as well. So if you can't buy the expertise in, hopefully it's part of the service that you're getting with your suppliers, with your partners that you're working with.
Exactly right, exactly. But I think that also comes in with the general sort of, logistics is one side of it. But another, you asked about what the barriers are that are stopping people from doing this. The other side of it is technology. Simply having the integrations, having everything talk to each other, is really hard. And there is good technology out there which has these integrations and can connect people's warehouse management system to their order management, to their the feed to and from the marketplaces, and the customer service team can log in and find out information about the products. But having all of this technology actually talk to each other properly is a major barrier. And then, of course, bringing in the language aspects to it, and then the marketplace requirements, it starts to get really messy. We've had some of our sellers who have had a really good process, but still at the crux of it, they will have for one product, for one SKU, they might have 300 columns of information. They'll have their Amazon color, their eBay color, their Walmart color. And then, of course, these have different values, because on Amazon, you're allowed to call it silver, but on eBay, you have to call it gray or blue and royal blue and navy blue. And it just becomes a mess.
Things, and a mess, and also makes it very difficult to scale. We're here to talk about diversification and how can you grow your business across multiple marketplaces. So it makes sense when you think about Amazon. Everybody, first place they go to, in most cases, their first port of call for starting out on a marketplace is going to be Amazon. So Amazon is huge, opens up huge opportunity for you. So I can understand how small businesses or businesses in general feel they need to, or it's worth that they make the effort to sell on Amazon. But what about the non-Amazon marketplaces where sales might be really low? What's the justification for diversifying into non-Amazon marketplaces?
Well, I think anyone selling anything to consumers who has low sales on a sales channel is probably used to asking themselves the question of why are the sales low and what can we do about it? Because the thing is, these marketplaces, they don't exist simply for the sake of it. They exist because they get traffic, and that's really the difference between a marketplace and a platform. Is that a marketplace focuses on generating traffic, not sales, other than Amazon, taking Amazon out of this situation. But generally, what a marketplace is there to do is to create a platform where buyers and sellers can meet each other. And their core focus is about generating traffic. Now, these businesses wouldn't exist if they weren't doing that well. So if you're not seeing sales on that channel, that doesn't mean that the channel's bad. It means that you're probably not using it properly.
Yes.
And that then comes back to what I was saying about, making sure that you're adding as much information about the products as possible, because this is the information that the marketplace needs in order to match that up. Now, there's not going to be, there's no single channel is going to generate the same amount of sales as Amazon in most cases. And I think this is also where a lot of people will look at their sales on, great marketplaces like Cdiscount and Kaufland, and they'll go, oh yeah, but I only get 10% of my sales from that I get on Amazon from Cdiscount. It's like, well, okay, if you're doing 100 grand a month on Amazon and you're doing 10 grand a month on Cdiscount, that's still, money coming in. What you want to be doing, and the position that most sellers that are reliant on Amazon should be trying to do, is to get themselves into a position where they're selling on as many non-Amazon marketplaces and generating as much income from those non-Amazon channels as they can to offset the sales that they're getting from Amazon. So if they're getting 100 grand a month from Amazon, they should be trying to get 100 grand a month from other non-Amazon accounts. And if they're not getting it from one, then they should try getting a second and a third and a fourth and keep adding more channels until that balance is there. Because if the Amazon account gets suspended from one day to the next.
Wow, you can imagine. Yes, I can imagine. So I get that. I get why, the rationale for saying it's really important to think about a diversified marketplace strategy, right? So you need to be selling, you're spreading your risk. You're not just putting all your eggs in one basket. That makes absolute sense. But if it's so obvious why sellers, should be thinking about diversifying beyond Amazon, then what's stopping them from doing just that? What are mentioned earlier what some of those blockers may be, but let's talk a bit more about each of those. So I think logistics was one that you talked about. Logistics, we talked about technology. Let's talk about each of those. So maybe start with the technology. Why is technology a barrier?
Technology is a barrier because the problem with existing technology, and this is an unashamed self-plug here, but the whole reason that we founded eChameleon is that the technology which is already available focuses on taking product information that you currently have and throwing it at the marketplace. But the problem is that you need to actually start at the other end of the process. You need to look at what the marketplace wants to receive from you and build your product data around that. So there's no point taking your Amazon title and trying to list it on eBay, or taking your website title and trying to list it on eBay. Yeah. It's going to be too long. And at the same time, you need to have the product information about your for the marketplace in mind. And you need to look at, okay, how am I allowed to describe this product that I'm selling on this marketplace or on that marketplace? And how can I create my product information specifically for each of those channels? Yeah. And obviously that's where our product comes in. You can do it without it as well. People, we built this at an agency level where we used to help sellers doing this. It was about doing it manually, because people would, they're doing it in Excel with, complicated Excel sheets. And it's perfectly doable, but it's just a case of not trying to take the product data that you've got and push it to the marketplaces, but creating your product data with the marketplaces in mind.
But how do you do that with technology? You know, whether it's e-chameleon or similar technology, how does the technology enable you to do that and avoid those, you know, really time-consuming processes of having to replicate the same data in different ways with spreadsheets and going absolutely crazy? How can technology help you in that situation?
Well, it depends on exactly where you want to be using the technology, but the technology that most people focus on is listing the information to different marketplaces. Okay, and that can be, in some cases it's really easy, in some cases it's really complex. And this is again why a lot of people get started with Amazon. Is it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everyone wants to sell on Amazon because that's where most of their sales are coming from. So then all the integrators will start off by building an Amazon integration first. And the Amazon integration is also, from a technical perspective, easier than a lot of other marketplaces. And the problem is that every marketplace thinks that their way is the right way. They all want to tell you, no, this is what your title should look like. This is how you can describe your product. This is how many characters you're allowed to use in a title and a bullet point in description. These are the attributes you're allowed to use within our category. And you know, the reason for it is consistency. They want to make sure that when a buyer applies a filter for blue, that they don't accidentally end up with a red item. But the thing is that from the marketplace perspective, the opposite is true, because the marketplaces are sitting there, and people often confuse the term marketplace with Amazon. But when you look at, again, every other non-Amazon marketplace, most of them are just small businesses that have small teams, and they have people sitting there going through the data that they're getting from their sellers, and they're pulling their hair out going, why doesn't this information match what we want it to? How is it so hard? And they don't understand the other perspective. And so there's this sort of miscommunication where the marketplaces are saying, we want this information from our sellers, and the sellers are saying, well, we're giving you this information, and there's a disconnect.
And a lot of frustration, I can imagine, you know, a lot of frustration. So this is where technology or software can help, you know, automate that, replicate the data, and sort of make it a lot easier, smoother process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and I can imagine that's going to not only save a lot of time and frustration, but potentially avoid you having to hire people to do that for you, because it is, you know, currently I've seen it happen where people are working on spreadsheets and manipulating spreadsheets to then serve the data up to a different marketplace. But marketplaces are absolutely vital, because certainly what I've noticed over the last few years is this explosion in marketplaces. And like you said earlier, even the big, you know, established brands that started off aren't digital first, that started off with high street stores in the beginning, sort of turned their noses up at saying, no, we're not going to go on marketplaces. But now, you know, so many consumers are buying on marketplaces that if marketplaces are not part of your mix, then potentially you're losing out on a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
Commercially, you need to be able to make that work. You need to succeed. And I certainly don't think that it can look deceptively easy to sell on a marketplace, can't it? But actually, there's a lot of work that goes behind that, like you've just described. And, you know, then you've got the delivery side of it as well, and having to meet very strict service level, you know, service level commitments in terms of delivery options, web delivery, returns as well. It's a lot.
Not to mention just then, I mean, there's also the customer service side. I mean, the thing is, there's really, we try and look at, I'd say, 3 core pillars of marketplace success, and, you know, customer service, delivery, and content. And the customer service and the delivery aspects are 2, I would say, relatively easy aspects to deal with, in the sense that it's about taking product from warehouse to consumer, and potentially having to deal with the fact that they might want to do the opposite. Customer service, it's about making sure that your team knows how quickly do we have to respond to marketplaces, to this marketplace versus that marketplace, what language do we have to do it in, how are we going to, you know, when are we allowed to authorize returns. But it's a process that can be done across all marketplaces and all sales channels. Where the product content, where it falls apart, is with the content. A title which is optimized, again, and I keep using this example, but a title which is optimized for a marketplace isn't then going to work for another one. And absolutely, you know, you really hit the nail on the head. Brands, have traditionally not liked marketplaces because they've and usually the argument is that it cheapens a brand.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy though, because a brand content creator, you imagine you have these board meetings at Adidas or Puma or wherever, there's like a conference room full of 20 people deciding, oh, we're going to call this product navy blue or royal blue.
Yeah.
And then they look at how it eventually ends up being listed on Amazon by some retailer that is, 7 steps down the chain. And this retailer was there dealing with listing errors, just going, oh, for God's sake, I just want to get this listing live. And I can't call it royal blue, so I'm just going to call it blue. And then the Amazon guy, the Adidas guys are there going, but this isn't royal blue, it's navy blue.
Exactly.
And then you have this, again, you have this disconnect between what the brands want and what the retailers have to do for the marketplace. And it's all because of these requirements in how the listing is actually allowed to be created. And so traditionally, this has just meant that the brands have gone, no, we don't want to sell on marketplaces. We don't want our products being advertised there because it cheapens the brand. It's not how it's supposed to look. And then you have the retailers wanting to sell these products on there, but then not being able to do it well because the marketplaces, for example, Amazon, they have their priority list of who gets to change product information on a listing.
Yeah.
And usually
so at the end of the day, regardless of, what businesses think internally, the reality of the matter is that marketplaces represent a huge opportunity to be able to reach new customers in new markets. But, like you said, there's 3 pillars to success. There is getting the logistics right to support that, getting the data right, the technology to enable that. And I think, the expertise as well was the 3rd pillar.
the customer service really was
Customer service, exactly, the experience. So tell us about some real life examples, some brands that you've been working with that have, say, maybe, started off as being on one of the core marketplaces like Amazon, where they've been able to successfully scale and diversify and grow their business across new marketplaces.
Well, I think it's, I wouldn't necessarily want to talk too much about the clients that we specifically work with, because it's a different use case, because, we're here to try and solve this problem that hasn't previously had a solution. And I don't want to sort of use the e-chameleon example. I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch, basically. But I think it's important to look at why marketplaces in general can become, or non-Amazon marketplaces in general are successful. And the first of which is that consumers are becoming less and less fond of Amazon, in the same sense that a lot of sellers aren't wanting to sell on Amazon because of the, there's a lot of sort of smaller sellers, especially when you look at industries like maybe the publishing industry or, like bookstores, who were kind of the first industry with a target on their back from Amazon, way back when it first started. And then also smaller businesses or businesses that kind of have a bit more of a sustainable approach to their day to day. There's a lot of anti-Amazon mindsets out there, both from a business and from a consumer perspective. So it's also important to remember that a lot of buyers simply don't buy from Amazon out of principle.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that they're not shopping online.
Yeah, exactly. And must say, just have to chip in there and say, look, this is not a session where we're beating up Amazon. Really, it's, again, all comes back to consumers, where consumers want to buy, what their preferences are. And you're right, because consumers, I think it's in Australia. Amazon has not been successful at all in Australia because, is that right? Because Australian consumers prefer to use their own local marketplace, which is, what is it called?
Well, to be honest, Amazon in Australia simply were just late to the game. And,
yes.
I think when you look at how Amazon is successful, a lot of it's based around the Prime offerings and things like that, which in Australia has been harder for them to offer just because of the size of it. Geographically, it's just a much bigger country. So it's been hard for them to get any kind of Prime type thing off the ground in comparison to what we're used to here in Europe. But the other thing is that Amazon only entered Australia a few years ago. eBay were the only real marketplace there until fairly recently. Catch.com.au started up a few years back, but that started off as a flash sale site. So it used to be effectively a retailer. It was kind of where you'd go to. It was a little bit like Click Frenzy, where you'd go and you just see like the deals of the day, and you just end up spending a bunch of cash on things that you don't really need, but they generated traffic. And I think Catch were one of the first
Yes,
businesses to
catch.
really
That's
say,
what I
like,
was trying
hey,
to
we're
think
getting
of.
all this
Yeah.
traffic. How can we get more products on here? I know, let's open the door and become a marketplace.
Yeah.
And they did, they're a great example of a business doing that well. And the same is true in New Zealand, though, where Amazon doesn't really exist yet, and you've only got a population of about 5 million people, but Trade Me is still a massive marketplace, and
Yes.
you've got really good traffic coming from, or good products coming from around the world, with British, American, Europe, and European retailers knowing that Trade Me is a good expansion opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also there are, it's worth for resellers, resellers, if they are thinking about expanding and diversifying across other marketplaces, simply to grow their business, because that's what you're trying to do at the end of the day, is reach more customers where you can compete, get them to buy your products. And the other key thing is that marketplaces can also be niche. So whereas you've got these big marketplaces like Amazon or eBay, sort of catch-all type of area where there's a lot of competition, there are also some of the smaller marketplaces are also niche marketplaces. So whether if you're a reseller, if you're a seller of luxury brands or electronics, there are specific niche marketplaces where it would be a great fit for your business and for your product. You're going to do well in those markets, provided again you can market yourself well on those platforms, which again comes back to all the data and the listings and how well you do that and how efficiently you do that.
Yeah, but it also, there's, in addition to having these niche categories, Chewy.com, for example, is a fantastic marketplace in America, but it's basically just for pet food or pet supplies. And there's no point selling on there if you're selling apparel, but maybe it's an opportunity for you to increase your apparel range to have a range of the same as, for dogs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the nice thing with marketplaces is also cross seasonality, where you have an option to very quickly and easily start selling on the other side of the world. Let's say you've got end of stock or last season items, which is the case for a lot of retailers who didn't sign up for new stock last year, or maybe had sold less than they were expecting to. They could look at selling that in Australia outside of season. So you're selling summer items in their summer now while it's winter here.
Great for clearing out end of line stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But I think you talked about the sort of some of the nuances with selling on marketplaces. I think one of the core issues that a lot of people, or one of the main reasons for actually doing this and for putting in this effort, which is what it comes down to, is work. The main reason for it is that most people don't do it. If you go onto any marketplace and you search for any product, you can go onto eBay, go onto Amazon, go onto Cdiscount, wherever, and type in men's trousers, women's jeans, kids shoes, whatever. You're gonna have like this never-ending list. You often hundreds of thousands to millions of products. If you apply one filter, that drops down in most cases by at least half.
And this is where you get down to the granularities of data item specific. So if you then plugged in, I don't know, light blue or 3/4 length or something like that, that's when it gets narrowed down. So it makes sense, and I understand why getting the item specifics right is really going to help you. But I still can imagine the complexity and just the amount of effort it takes when you look at having to do that differently for every single marketplace, which is where I guess any tools that can help you.
Well, I mean, that's obviously where, that's really where eChameleon then comes in at that point. But the thing is, what eChameleon is doing fundamentally is simply it's an easier way of doing it than in Microsoft Excel. But what we started off, eChameleon also started out as one of those really crazy Excel sheets where you can start using, one guy in the company who understands Excel well and kind of has an idea on how the marketplaces works. You can usually build some pretty simple formula within Excel and some lookup lists to start pulling in this information. Okay, if we've chosen blue here, then on this marketplace, we can call it navy blue. Where it becomes a problem is that these requirements are always changing. And I think something that a lot of people don't realize is that the requirements change all the time. So what happens, for example, I think it was end of March this year, for example, Amazon and eBay decided on the same day, 22nd of March, I think it was, this is the date where you have to update all of your item specifics and all of your attributes. And it was across like most of the major categories. It was like apparel, electronics, home and garden, sports and outdoors. So, retailers were just scrambling at the last minute to try and update, sometimes thousands of listings. And there's fantastic tools out there like OptiSell is a really good tool for eBay that has this functionality. But the thing is, what it comes down to is those changes are already there. They're only mandatory from that date. But the idea is that if you keep up to date and you kind of update your listings on a regular basis, for one thing, you're generally then the first and sometimes the only seller with that new valid value in that category.
So you can get a head start whilst everybody else is trying to get their listings updated.
Before people have even realized that there's a new value there.
Right.
You can, if you've got this new value and it's appropriate for your listing, you can add it then. But then when the marketplaces turn around and say, oh, now it's going to be mandatory, you don't even have to do that. You don't have to have that last minute scramble.
And obviously, if you are looking to add, it's not just the time it takes to actually manage your listings once you're on a marketplace, but also what about the time it takes to set yourself up on a marketplace? How does technology, or say, whether it's your technology or someone else's, what kind of tools are available out there as well to help resellers quickly get set up on new marketplaces? And then also, what kind of timescales are you looking at when you're trying to get onto a new marketplace?
As with everything to do with marketplaces, honestly, the problem is that it's different per channel. And what's happening a lot at the moment is, as you said, loads of businesses are kind of going, oh, marketplaces, yeah, that's a thing. Let's become a marketplace. And suddenly all the VCs out there are throwing money at businesses that are wanting to become marketplaces, and obviously also Amazon aggregators is another big topic there. But you generally have all of these businesses that already get the traffic, and they're looking at how can they continue to grow. And the easiest way for them to continue to grow is to take advantage of the traffic they've got and try and encourage third-party sellers to come on board.
Exactly.
Now, what happens though is that this process often takes months, years. There's some marketplaces out there where you can sign up and you think, this is a great channel, I want to be selling on here. It's one of the largest marketplaces in one of the largest e-commerce countries. Let's go here. You sign up for an account and you know that you meet all the criteria. You go and you found a company in that, you register a business entity in that country, you match all the criteria and you press, okay, now I'm ready, apply now. And it's like, great, now you're on a waiting list. We'll be in touch in 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
And from a seller's perspective, it's like, where do you even... So of course people then go to Amazon because you don't have that. You can sign up for an account and you can start selling. Like, there's a bit of gating between, some categories are gated and you have to, like medicinal or nutrition is often something that's gated. But what it comes down to is that each of these marketplaces have their own restrictions. And sometimes you have really high-end marketplaces where, they will only accept high-end brands, or it's maybe invitation only, or you can only go on there if you're using a preferred integration partner. And so in that case,
that's all part of the homework, right? So before you decide as a reseller, when you're looking around at what marketplace is available, you've got to do your homework. You need to be able to understand each marketplace, who are their customers, what kind of traffic do they get? But also you'll be asking questions like, what do I need to do to get on, to get on your marketplace? How much time will it take me? How much cost? What's it going to take in terms of time and cost as well? These are all, you've got to do your homework before you go in. So you go into a marketplace, with your mind open to it. You're already prepared.
But then it's also a case of, what are the actual requirements once you're on there? And now I'm not talking about product requirements. I'm talking, I'm thinking about like other requirements, like, do you have to have neutral packaging?
Wow.
What
Yeah.
happens if a buyer, can you use your existing FBA process to fulfill to this? You can use Amazon's multi-channel fulfillment. And it's only very recently that they've started offering neutral packaging. But until then, that was always a case of like, well, what if my Walmart buyer gets an Amazon box? Walmart aren't going to like that.
Yeah.
And so you then have to start looking into other options for that. And then, there's this never ending list of these really small things that people tend not to think about until it's already a problem.
Logistics side of it. Yeah. The logistics piece. And certainly, marketplaces is not, even on Amazon, it's not all FBA fulfilled by Amazon. We work with a lot of sellers who are selling on Amazon and do the delivery for them. But certainly, like you said, there's a lot of expectations that you have to meet, rules in place, service level agreements, quite rigid as well in terms of how you've got to meet requirements for delivery dates, for returns processes, options, all of that. And if if your delivery lets you down, then you're going to get you could be subject to fees, you can get deranked, you can there's so many things that can penalize you for those things. So it really is a whole end-to-end process, isn't it? When you're trying to sell on marketplaces, you've got to have all your pieces of the puzzle. Everything's got to be working very well together, and it's got to be slick.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think, this comes back to what I was saying before, though, that marketplaces in a lot of cases are actually small businesses. And, I think this is where a lot of people get stuck with maybe with not expanding as well as they could, or maybe kind of the expectation management, that their expectations when they start looking at a new target marketplace, and they go there and they kind of expect a similar experience to what they've had with an Amazon or an eBay. And this is again where we talk about trying to level this playing field of e-commerce. It's not just from the seller perspective, but also from the marketplace perspective. Fundamentally, what we're trying to do is make more of a unified e-commerce world.
Yes, and I love that. I think what you're saying, I'm absolutely behind you. I think I'm all for helping businesses grow and scale, and how marketplaces are really key to be able to scale very easily, but also, of course, to de-risk some of your revenue. If it's all sitting out on one marketplace, you really need to spread it around. I think this chat that we've had has been really good in terms of hopefully helping some of the resellers who are hopefully listening to this session think about what are what the rationale is for diversifying, expanding your business across, say, some of the going beyond some of the key marketplaces. What are the key considerations to think about so that you can really be successful, and how technology can really help when it comes to just trying to create better efficiencies so that you can be able to scale. You can add on more marketplaces without necessarily adding on more heads or overhead, which is so vital, especially if you're a smaller business. It's so very vital.
Yeah.
But I do have one question for you, one last question, which is I'm dying to ask Jesse, and it's the Brexit question, because I think this is the only session that I'm actually going to raise the Brexit question. And what I'm going to ask is, Jesse, Brexit has thrown a real spanner in the works in cross-border selling with EU markets. How is this impacting marketplaces? What are you seeing happening in the marketplace world?
We've seen it's hard to answer directly, because obviously you have to it's correlated with COVID. So on the one hand, e-commerce and marketplaces alongside have seen unprecedented levels of growth. So that's been pretty cool. I think what it comes back to is what I was saying though as well about marketplaces being small businesses. So I think where a lot of marketplaces have struggled, and I'm talking from the marketplace side, not from the marketplace selling side. A lot of marketplaces have struggled just to onboard sellers. We've really noticed that smaller marketplaces that might have otherwise kind of been like, oh yeah, let's maybe try this expansion opportunity and see if it works. They haven't been able to do it because most retailers, most of their would-be selling partners have just been scrambling and trying to figure out, how to run their business with less people in the warehouse, but more sales coming in. And how are we going to do this? And the last thing they want to do is start adding new sales channels to potentially get more sales coming in. So, I think where a lot of focus has been going is, okay, let's just get everything going on Amazon. Let's just make sure that Amazon's taken care of, and we're not going to get suspended there. And, let's make sure that that ship is running smoothly. And then obviously where a lot of these European marketplaces, who are the ones that are then more affected by Brexit,
Yes.
are probably also noticing the hit, is that a lot of British retailers are kind of pulling back and just saying, okay, let's just focus on the UK. And, they're looking at, and I'm really happy to see, like, OnBuy, for example, has exploded from this growth. And I think a lot of that's probably part of this, because it's a really good expansion opportunity in the UK, which for a lot of sellers, we've seen a lot of sellers kind of replacing the sales that they were maybe getting from European marketplace. They're now getting on OnBuy. So it's kind of helping to balance that loss. But I think it's important that people still look at these European marketplaces as an option, but just accept that there might be a couple of extra steps to get selling on there.
I think you're absolutely right. I think for those, what we've certainly seen with the brands that we work with is when Brexit hit, and everything, the borders came up on the 1st of January. There were some brands that you temporarily just paused and said it's too difficult, or we don't know what we're doing yet. We're either gonna, we're gonna pause ourselves in Europe for now until we get our head around this. And some of them have gone back to it. But Europe is a massive market, and there's some huge marketplaces. The way we look at it and what we see is that for those businesses that have had to go out, get themselves, EORI numbers, harmonization codes, be able to put new systems, processes in place to manage duties and taxes and all of that, so that they can continue selling on marketplaces or directly into Europe. Well, you know what? Now that they've done that, it opens up the rest of the world for them. So it's like, now that they're ready to sell in Europe, they could sell anywhere else in the world.
Well, that's exactly it. And people have been doing it for years anyway, when they want to expand to America or Australia. But the other thing is, of course, that it's also really low-hanging fruit to continue selling in Europe. Like, there's some paperwork to get sorted, but the problem is, as you said, so many sellers have just not bothered, which means that there's a lot less competition here now. There's still a demand, all the same demand is there than used to be, because I deal with a lot of German sellers, and a typical German online retailer is probably 10 years behind a typical English online retailer. 5 years ago when I first started, or 6 years ago when I started selling to German retailers, it was, oh yeah, we're online. We've got a website that was built in like 2004. The idea of marketplaces just hadn't even occurred to them. And similarly, because of COVID, it has started to grow a bit here, but there's less competition here now as well. So if it's even more worth doing all that paperwork.
That's even more encouraging then, to think that if there are people that have pulled out, competitors that have pulled out, that means, the demand is still there, and it's probably growing, will continue to grow. So it's an even better opportunity. But at the same time, if you can sell in Europe, you can sell anywhere else, whether that's on a marketplace or direct. So, international expansion, which is what this whole day is about, is cross-border selling. And really, the world is your oyster to sell more.
Exactly right.
So listen, Jesse, I'm just conscious of time. Right, it's been fantastic talking to you. Really great to hear about eChameleon. And I want to just encourage everybody to make sure you go and visit eChameleon's showcase. Jesse is going to be in the meeting room there, so please just go along to the showcase, find out more about eChameleon. If you've got any questions, that's where you can speak directly to Jesse. I'd really, really encourage that. So thank you very much, Jesse.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And yes, we're going to be taking a lunch break now. So I think we're going to be back here again in, let me see. Yes, we will be recommencing at 1:30. So we're going to be taking a lunch break. Oh no, I've got that wrong. Yes, no, we are. We're going to be recommencing. Sorry, I beg your pardon. We are going to be recommencing at 1:30. So we'll be back here. So please do take the time to go and have a break, but also take advantage, go into the showcases, go into the HubSpot, Don't forget to go and visit Jess's showcase, please. And enjoy the rest of the day. And we'll see you back here at 1:30. Thank you.